Hello, this is Mark Hillary in sunny Sao Paulo. I just wanted to let you know before we get started that this will be the last episode for a few weeks. Peter and I will be taking a mid-year break for a couple of weeks. The next episode will be coming at you on Thursday, September 12th. So until then, have a great summer if you're in the US or Europe, or down here in the South, have a great end of winter. Hello and welcome to the CX Files for August 15th, 2024. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Hey, Mark. Hello to everybody listening today. Peter Ryan in Montreal. Mark, great to see you, and hope that everything has been going well from the standpoint of your winter months, as I rub in the fact that we're still in summer here in North America.
Yeah, we can cope. 20 something in the middle of winter is not too bad. And
Stop.
we've even hit the 30s as well. So I think that frankly, I would take it. I would take like high 20s all year round and accept that's perfect, because once we do get back to summer, then it really is so intensely hot. Once you start getting up part where the air is hotter than your own blood, then it starts getting difficult to do any work.
That sort of brings images of like Vulcans and Mr. Spock and stuff. So yeah, I'll be passing on that. I remember an episode of Star Trek where, or maybe it was the Star Trek 3, where Spock's blood was boiling, and I was like, that doesn't sound too pleasant. So yeah. Anyway, we have got a really, really cool interview today, Mark. I had the chance to catch up with Martin Anderson. Now, Martin is the co-founder and CEO of Lemon Business Solutions. It's a contact center outsourcing company based in the UK, in the north of the country, Stockton-on-Tees specifically. Now, Martin has been one of the more pervasive posters on LinkedIn, and he's somebody who I really enjoy the posts. One of the posts that caught my eye and prompted the interview was where he introduced the post as saying, the diary of Martin Anderson, aged 44 and 3/4. So people who grew up in a certain age will know what that is a reference to: the Secret Diaries of Adrian Mole, or the Diary of Adrian Mole, aged 13 and 3/4. One of the classic, not just series of books, but also television programs that I know you adored in the United Kingdom growing up, and I loved when they finally made their way over to Canada, both on the TV screen and in the library. So I was really interested in this post Martin had put out, because he effectively enunciated his entire journey within the scope of the CX industry. And I thought, wow, what a story he's got. And wouldn't it be great to tease this out over the course of an episode of the CX Files? So I invited Martin to come on, and we had just a wonderful, wonderful discussion, finding out a little bit about how he started in CX, how he got involved, as many of us do, sort of like peripherally, and then found himself not being able to escape the industry. Once you're in, rarely do you ever come out. And we talked a little bit about his journey as an entrepreneur, and the journey he's taken with his wife. It's a husband and wife combo. A little bit about how they were able to navigate the first few early years. And Mark is an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur, I am too. In a lot of cases, you're having to perform open heart surgery with a Band-Aid and make sure that while the world sees one thing, you're scrambling and treading water underneath like a duck, just to make sure things stay above and floating. And where they are today, and what Martin's organization is up to, just in terms of what they're providing in CX. So truly not just an interesting chat, but a very inspiring one too. And I think a great one for any entrepreneur that's out there looking to try and burgeon a new organization within the scope of CX services.
Yeah, it's always great to hear founder stories in this business, because I think that we've all experienced terrible customer service at some point, and just thought, well, I could do better than that. Why can't I just set up? If I put a few grand into a small BPO shop and just set up, I could do better. But I think clearly what you find when you talk to the founders is just that it can take years to get going. You need that initial client right at the start, someone who believes in you, and then you need some luck as well to just make it all hang together.
Yeah, exactly. And what I love is that Martin and his organization have built themselves up. They've ba they base themselves around quality. They've based themselves around not necessarily being the biggest BPO, but they want to be one of the best BPOs. They want to be one of the best organizations providing the best quality interactions. And that's really refreshing to hear. So often in a sector like outsourcing, where everything is based on volume, where everything is based on the number of workstations or the number of agents you can provide, they're focused on certainly wanting to be one that's going to grow, but they want to do so on the basis of providing some of the best quality interactions out there. So my recommendation is that let's go to our interview with Martin and find out a little bit more about the journey about him and Lemon Business Solutions. And I hope everybody enjoys it. Well, this week, the CX Files takes a bit of an entrepreneurial bent. This is our version, maybe, of Dragon's Den in retrospective. I am so excited to welcome somebody who I have been trying to get on the podcast for quite some time, and we finally made our schedules align. I couldn't be more pleased to introduce Martin Anderson, who is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Lemon Contact Center. He joins us from his offices in the northeast of England. Martin, great to be able to connect with you.
Peter, I'm so glad to be here. I love everything you do and to get the opportunity to actually speak and talk a bit more about the story. Thank you so much.
Well, the story that we're going to go through is truly one of the most interesting ones I've encountered over the course of my time in the customer experience management space. And for the context of our listeners, one of the reasons that you and I were initially able to connect was because I've been following you for quite some time. I love what Lemon Contact Center is up to. And I really love the posts you put on LinkedIn, Martin. And we were chatting a little bit before I hit the record button about the fact that there's so much drivel out there, so much vacuous garbage on LinkedIn that is polluting, I think, not just LinkedIn, but probably all social networks. Your stuff has got depth. I find your stuff has got substance. Your posts have a hook that really draw people in. And you're not afraid to break a few eggs to make an omelet. You're not afraid to be controversial. And I really like that. But the one post that prompted me to reach out and say, Martin, we got to talk. We got to get you on the podcast was one that you put up, I think about a month or so back, as I refer to it here. And the title of it was The Diary of Martin Anderson, aged 44 and 3/4. Now, this immediately grabbed me because one of my favorite books of all time is Adrian Mole, The Diary of Adrian Mole, aged 13 and 3/4. That was a direct allusion to that book and to the television show. And what cracked me up was, as we were chatting and preparing for our interview, you said I was the only person to date who actually got the reference.
That's true. Yeah, no, absolutely true.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And what a life it's been as I read through the allegory of all the different events that shaped you to where you are today, Martin. And it truly has been an incredible journey, a professional, as we'd say in French and Quebec, you're a parcours. Maybe we could start off the interview today by talking a little bit about you. And could you talk a little bit about what prompted you to get into the contact center space as a career? What was the impetus that made you think this is a sector I want to be involved in, not just as an agent or as an employee or as somebody in the background, but somebody who wants to take the bull by the horns and really do something in CX?
Yeah, it's an interesting story, really, but it's accidental is the absolute truth. There was never a preconceived plan in my mind to get into contact centers of CX world. And if I'm being honest, I don't even really consider myself a contact center expert in many ways. I've never really worked within a contact center bar my own prior to that. So to take you quickly back to the beginning part of that story. So when I left school, I went and started an apprenticeship with a company called Comcast, which you're probably familiar with. It opened up a franchise over in the UK, and I just worked as an apprentice technician back then. And I worked my way up through the kind of engineering side of the business. But I always harbored this inner drive to start my own business. A long time ago, I remember sat as a teenager reading Richard Branson's book, Lose My Virginity, and I came across, the story about him buying an island, and I remember thinking, wow, you can actually do this. I can physically go and buy an island and live in it. This is just amazing, and it just kind of set me on this kind of entrepreneurial drive that you can. There's so many things possible out there in the world that when you're in your own little box and your communities and things, you don't think you can achieve. But it kind of opened my mind up that things can be achieved, and the world's not as a scary place if you want to work hard and put the effort in. So I had a drive to start a business, but I was currently working in this at Comcast as an engineer. But through my kind of progression with the company, and bear in mind this was the kind of mid to late 90s, so kind of talking dot-com boom time as well. So I was working for a telecoms company back then. There was a lot of money flowing through the business, etc. So things were moving at very, very fast pace as kind of the internet exploded. And I found myself getting pushed through to being an engineer within what was a network operations center. Now, a network operations center, also known as a NOC, for people who aren't familiar, is kind of the central hub of the engineering department where all of the network is monitored. So you can imagine you're sat there, there's banks of screens with alarms going off, and there's people making phone calls in, reporting faults, etc., etc. And your job was to manage the inbound calls, manage the alarms, and then call engineers and dispatch engineers and try to resolve things remotely, etc. So that is what I knew. That was my background training. And then I met my partner, Leslie, who's co-founder of the business. We got together on one night and she had a similar kind of drive for business. All we talked about was business. She came from a local council that she's working with, but she'd been working also with what you class as nurse call alarms. So the kind of thing where the elder may press a button if they fall down, it will go through a 24/7 ARC or control center. So she had a bit of an inkling around this kind of 24/7 response environment. And all we simply did, Peter, we both want to start a business. We know nothing else, but we know how to answer calls, log things down, and send engineers out to things, because that's what we've been used to. And we just simply thought, well, we'll do that. We got a pen, paper, we got a mobile phone, and we were sat in her mother's garage in a little office above there. And we just went out there and started marketing ourselves back in the old ways of just sending mail shots in the post, etc. And then we won a couple of businesses and so on and so forth. And we won a rather large engineering company. And the business just literally grew from there, from this tiny office. We had no heating, we had no hot water. We slept on the office floor. We got up when the phone rang, because it was 24/7, right? We were 24/7 from day one. So predominantly we were out of hours. And then we just worked our socks off. And then the business grew and grew and grew. And it went from there. And that kind of what eventually moved into what became as the business is today, as in a contact center. But I think, touching on your point at the beginning, one of the reasons I probably don't talk maybe all the CX lingo and sort of getting sometimes into the depths of them conversations, because there's far more knowledgeable people than me. I don't really come from that background. I'm a bit rough and ready with how I've ended up in this kind of sector. But I also, therefore, look at it from a different lens at times. And I think that's healthy, right? I think it's healthy that we're not all just kind of, it's not just groupthink, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense in my opinion, Martin. And I think that it's important to recognize that people who don't come from our space play an invaluable role, because I think that they keep maybe some of the lifers honest. And you made a reference about how you sort of found yourself in CX accidentally. I have a great friend, a frequent guest on the podcast, Jim Farnsworth, who said, nobody sets out in their career to get into contact centers. It just sort of happens, but it's very rare that once somebody comes in that they actually leave. It's a sector that I find has a real cohesiveness and a stickiness, and there is a real sense of energy once you get involved in the space. There's something magnetic that just keeps drawing you in. Now, you talk a little bit about when you founded the company, and obviously I think some of the most important elements as you were setting up, as you were saying, spending all the time at the office, sleeping on the floor, being ready 24/7 to answer a telephone call when it comes in. What would you say was what would you say would be some of the key lessons that you learned from that first little bit as you started the business up, as you went through some of these more challenging experiences about getting up and running, as you transitioned to more of an established business? What would be the key standouts for you as you think about maybe some of the key life lessons that you drew from that?
Yeah, I think the benefit we had, the double-edged sword really, was our naivety of youth. Because we were young and inexperienced, we didn't have any degree or education to help us from a business perspective. We didn't have any sort of family members who supported us. It was just two of us at the time, sort of in our early 20s, just trying to do something. But we were naive enough to think that we could do. If we knew, a bit older, maybe we would have shied away from doing it. Always had more responsibility. I didn't have children. I had a dog. That was it. So there wasn't any kind of pressure. I did still work, Comcast at the time, so I had an income on the side because I did shifts there. So I just did back-to-back shifts with Leslie to cover the 24/7 operation. So that naivety helped, but I think it also, in hindsight, would have held us back in not knowing what we didn't know. I know it's an often used phrase, but it's really critical. At the time, we didn't look out and sort of look at our strengths and our weaknesses, personal strengths and weaknesses, and we didn't maybe fill in gaps we could have filled in easier by getting advice, mentor being a great one because it's not necessarily expensive. Finding people who could help us, who have been on that path and on that route prior to us, who could have helped us along the way, so we didn't make so many pitfalls and wrong steps, and we could have moved therefore probably a lot faster than we did. And it's not that I say I regret that because I don't, because our journey and the struggles that we've had have made our journey worthwhile. And I think now the learnings we've had over the 21 years we've been in business have put me in a stronger position to act quicker now and also reflect and help other people around me. But I definitely think that, when you're younger, maybe it's arrogance of youth, Peter, I don't know. You didn't kind of think you needed anyone to tell you what to do. You just kind of thought you knew it already, even though you didn't. Yeah. And you go on. But it also, as I say, it's a wonderful time because you can take those risks without even knowing you're taking them. Because there were people at the time, I have to say, looking back, when we moved from our first office into an office, the one above the garage, one we just, lived in Leslie, my partner's mum's house. When we moved to an actual office where I was paying a landlord rent, that was quite a big step. And people were saying, you shouldn't be doing this. You're taking on, debt, you're taking on risks, etc., etc. Thankfully, probably what was, advice coming from a good place, but we just ignored it and thought, no, we can do it. It's fine. Was crack on and do it, and it went from there. And it was just, keep on trucking. That hard work gets you through.
And I think there's also a degree of confidence that plays in there, Martin. And it's interesting because there's so many examples, I think, where people have maybe, with the best will in the world, counseled, play it safe, play it cautious, don't take risks. But the reality is it's the risk takers that do move ahead in the world, and just believing in yourself and yourselves as a couple believing in what you were doing has truly brought you to a very, very interesting place right now as we sit here at midpoint in 2024. When you consider that journey over the course of the past couple of decades,
I would just add to that. I think it's really important as well. I always have an adage that you talk about taking risks. I think as well, making decisions, it's better to make the wrong decision than make no decision at all, because at least if you make the wrong decision, you can realize it and then you can reverse it and move forward. Procrastinating too long and doing nothing because you're risk averse can be actually more damaging than not. I think just be mindful, make the decisions, have a plan B, have a get out clause. As long as you're not doing anything that's going to sink your business or anything overnight, which you're probably not going to do, there's always different ways around. I think that I just keep moving forward, but it ain't a straight line. It's, a business like anything, like our careers or, our personal lives are absolutely all over the place. And we always say over here, you can't change the weather or the wind, but you can adjust the sails. And we do that constantly. But that constant changing for me, is just constant sort of driving towards improvement.
You referenced one of my favorite lines from a top 10 list I saw one time on LinkedIn, believe it or not. It was Tony Soprano's Life Lessons for Good Management. And it was make a decision. Even a bad decision is better than no decision. So
okay, cool.
Fair play. So Martin, let's shift gears a little bit to the issue of managing a growing and successful business alongside bringing in a family into the world. Now, you reference in your LinkedIn post the fact that you have welcomed a family. I believe you said you have two little ones, and
not so little now, but yes,
not so little now. Funny how that happens. How did yourselves as a couple manage the whole balance, the whole equilibrium about raising a family while you were growing a business over the course of the past couple of decades?
The truth is, it's just incredibly hard. It is a time of life in our reflection that there was a lot of stress involved, a lot of difficulty and struggles. I remember a particular time when Leslie, my partner, she was pregnant with our daughter, and she was heavily pregnant, and we were moving office, and we just won a large contract with an international law firm. And I was doing something with the IT system. I can't remember exactly what. It was, I don't know, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And she was really heavily pregnant, just asleep on the office floor. I remember turning around and seeing that, still picturing in my mind's eye. But we were so driven with that end goal in mind of what we wanted to achieve that even through the stress and the hardship and the sacrifices, right, between us, because we were running the business and we always had to be there when it was smaller, particularly, we were missing things. One of us always missing something or running late for something, or you stress dropping the kids off, you're playing tag team with things. There's no way of looking back at it and saying it was a pretty time. It really wasn't. It was bloody hard work. But I think there's another famous saying somewhere along the lines, but when it doesn't break you, makes you stronger. And I think that them learnings and really look, we're on the same page. We want to be where we want to be and where we want to get to, what we're trying to do with the business, the ethos we're trying to build within the culture, that this is so important we can get through this time. Because one thing I've learned, in life, the good and bad times, definitely. However, they pass. If you're going through a rough time, it passes. You just got to stick in there and work on it, and be open, good communication, talking to each other as much as possible, not harboring grudges, appreciating different people's sort of positions and moods. And I'll tell you what I did as well. I read a famous book. I think it's Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Don't know if you've ever seen that book before. That's a brilliant relationship guide as well. So that solves some of our problems going through as well. So it was a tough time. I can't take away it. But again, the journey is what makes it what makes it fun, and when you get through and you have the successes, the lows make the highs even better.
That's an amazing philosophy, and I think some very sound judgment that you've talked a little bit about, and from the standpoint of looking at it big picture and long term, Martin, I think we're 100% aligned on that. Let's talk a little bit about Lemon Contact Center in terms of 2024. Can you talk a little bit about where that journey has brought you from a business standpoint? Maybe talk a little bit about the business to those who don't know about it. What types of industries are you servicing? What functions are you providing? Where are you located? Give us the 40,000-foot view of the company.
Yeah, sure. So we're a 24/7 contact center. We're based over in the UK, as you guys know, up in the northeast. We're a one site onshore in the UK. We're predominantly a bureau contact center, so it's a shared agent environment. We do dedicated contracts as well, to be short term and things like that. And that's what it's been like since day one. As me and Leslie started, we were working across multiple contracts when there's two of us, and now there's over 100 working across that basis. Predominantly, we work in engineering sectors and healthcare as well. Now, kind of going back to the story at the beginning, my background comes from engineering, and that's kind of just played out through the beginning. I guess it's because it's the environment that I feel comfortable in. It's the language I'm used to talking, but I kind of also feel it's a bit of a niche environment as well, because you know more than anyone, when you look around the world, sort of the big contracts and things going out there are kind of the big retail kind of providers. Being in this kind of engineering space is a little bit of a niche. People, to some extent, shy away from it at times, but something I don't think people should. To be fair, I think it's a fantastic environment. It's robust. It's resilient generally from a recession-proof point of view, and it's allowed us to kind of get our brand known across that in like facilities maintenance, lift, HVAC, all them kind of areas, and kind of spin off into the healthcare sector where we look after kind of product support with over here maybe products that are supplied into the NHS, so their kind of supply chain and things like that. So it's been great. I love this area of the business. I love dealing with different engineering people, operational people. Again, just it's what I call home. And it's been good for the business right from day one since we won our first engineering contract. And right up to now with all the guys and opportunities we've got in the pipeline.
Okay, so final question here, Martin. I am a 23-year-old who is looking to enter the CX space as an entrepreneur. I'm looking to set up my own CX services firm. I'm coming to you as somebody who was very much in a similar position a couple of decades ago. What advice would you say, based on your experience from when Leslie and yourself founded the company and were sleeping on the floor, eating the takeaways all the way through today? What advice would you give a young budding entrepreneur who wants to get into this space?
Wow, this feels like I could write a book here. There's so many thoughts, isn't there? I'll give you, if I can, I'll be succinct, but I'll give you a few things. First thing, be brave. Be brave. When people say you can't do it, take that as I'm going to show you I can do it, firstly, and don't worry. Take calculated risks. Don't do things that are going to, take the feet from underneath you, but do be brave out there and take those risks. Have a plan A, B, and C. You focus on plan A, but you've always got different maneuvers, like a chessboard. You know where you're moving the pieces and trying to see sort of three steps ahead. I would say also, especially the business scales, you'll start with, a handful of people working in a room very closely together, and everyone's sort of like jabbering on and chatting together, and you're building that environment. But as you're scaling up, you need to recognize roles and responsibilities fairly early on, even if you're not enacting them. Even if right at the beginning you kind of got 6 or 7 hats, you need to start segmenting and getting people who are specialists in these areas to drive the business forward, and then put the reporting in place, the good governance, that each kind of area, person, department reports up like a Christmas tree up to the top, so the governance structure's in there. That allows you as a leader to drive the business through, as minimum amount of KPIs that you can get, but 5 to 6 KPIs, and you know exactly what's going on in your business, and you can delve down into more granular detail as you want. But I kind of call all that your scaffolding for the business. You get that right. Get it right when you're small. Always think with that kind of longer term goal in mind. So if this is where I am today, this is the structure, but this can be the same structure if I was 10 times bigger, et cetera, et cetera. So you're always looking ahead. And finally, which might seem a bit odd, but even right at the beginning, when you're kind of having those initial thoughts in the business plan, one thing I didn't do, but I would do if I started now, was consider, who am I going to sell the business to? What's my exit plan, whenever that may be? So, I remember a friend telling me recently, you're only going to exit a business in 2 ways. It's in a box, or you're selling it. You're going out 1 or 2 ways. Now, really, ideally, to get the most value, you want to be selling that business at the most opportune time. So you've got to think about, who is the buyer? What do they look like? What is that kind of persona of that company or person, depending if it's strategic or a kind of P company? And then you have to build the business. This is key. You have to build the business with that buyer in mind, because that goes down what verticals you're going to be in, what markets you're going to target, what kind of contracts do you want. Consider the length of the contracts. So, how much is that contract worth? There's no point going into business and having rolling 30-day contracts, because when someone comes to value you, they ain't worth that much. You've got to be going for the longer term, more dedicated stuff that actually adds value actually on the paper. But everything you do you have to think of that end point, the end game in mind. That allows, before you start, that allows you to structure a company in the right way. You don't want to be getting to the point of, when you're thinking about exiting or selling, having to sort of re-engineer your company and put structures in place, because ultimately it's going to take you a lot of time. Due diligence might end up becoming a bit of a mess, and the value of your company will go down. So start with the end point in mind, and I think that's been well written about over time by some very, very fantastic sort of business advisors, but it's one that's absolutely critical in my eyes.
Martin Anderson, who is the CEO and co-founder of Lemon Contact Center. This has been an absolutely fascinating discussion. I really appreciate you taking some time. I know how busy you are running a very successful and growing organization, but I think I speak for all of our listeners saying this has been illuminating, and you've given some very sound advice, which has been based on some very practical experience. So thanks for joining the CX Files today.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.